Okay, so in this scenario, we will take an application, a random application from GitHub, and we will run our automation on it, and we will see what results that it generates and how helpful they are. For that, we will go to GitHub, pick up a application which is a standard Spring Boot application, and then we will proceed. So this scenario would simulate a situation where we have a new developer to our team in our organization who doesn't know anything about our applications and is required to start to work. Or a situation where you as an experienced developer have to look into code that is applications that is legacy, and you're not very aware or don't feel very confident about that, and we will see how these the JUnits that get generated help us in this scenario, and how we can generate these JUnits rather than manually writing it for these applications. So this application, since it is a wild application, we just don't know. We have no control over this application. We have no control about. We have no knowledge about what the application does, and we also don't know the programming style that is used. So all these are unknowns to us. We will still take the automation and run it against it and see what comes out of it. Okay, so for that, what we will do is we will go to this GitHub, this random GitHub GitHub application. This one here is a Spring Boot application which has H2 database and does database CRUD operations. So basically, it will do the create, delete, get, those kind of operations. It has a POM XML. Okay, so this is a standard application. So we will follow the steps here. So that's the application we want. I need to clone this application. So I will first go to this step, and this is the my Medium article that we are referring to for just following the steps. If you need details on what the automation does, how it does, it's all given here. So this is the link for it. Okay, so we go back to this step here, and we say, so we want to clone this. So for that, we will just go to our local path. Okay, so this is test project. We will clone it here, and I will also open command prompt so that I can run the git commands here. So in order to clone this, I need to first get the git URL. Let's go to that location first. The location is this. Git clone and the git URL. Okay, so let's see what came in here. Okay, so this application got cloned here, and yep, it has a form. So let's go ahead to the next. This is the application, the test application. What is the next step? Okay, let's run a mvn clean install just to see whether this application is stable. It actually builds and does not have build errors. So for that, we will run this, because if it doesn't build, then there is no point running this automation, because we need a stable application, an application that has no compilation errors, and one that is able to launch as expected. Okay, it looks like it has one test JUnit test, and it has run that, and it's a build success. So yes, so this is a stable application. What is the next step? We will, okay, now we will run our automation. I will go to command prompt again, go to our automation path. So this is the one that has the setup.bat, all right, the one that we brought to our machine earlier. So I am going to launch the setup.bat. Okay. The very first step says this is informational, but let's go through it so that we know that our application, the test application, is in the right shape for us. So it says Spring Boot application that starts up. Okay, it says prerequisites for this automation is Spring Boot application that starts up successfully with Maven clean install. This we've already tested and it is a stable application. We need JDK 8 or higher and Maven local setup. So I already have this on my machine. I have JDK 17 and Maven local setup, corresponding Maven local setup here. Most of the Java and Spring Boot developers would already have this on their machine. Reference form. Okay, a reference form is located here in automation, Junit Mockito, and app setup. So under our app setup there is templates and this particular one section. So section Junit Mockito mandate. So basically in the application of this, in this test application, we want to make sure the form has Junit Mockito, Jacoco, and our Spring Boot starter test dependency. This is a must. If not, then we can simply refer to this reference form and then add those dependencies. So it should be a straightforward task. What we will do is we will check whether this application has it or not. This is the application and this is the form. So what we will do is, rather than opening this up in okay, so this is our form. We see that this is the form of our test application. We see that it is using a standard Spring Boot starter parent. This is the artifact, group ID, etc. All standard stuff. Okay, it is using Java 17, and the earlier test application that we used was on Java 8. Also, you will notice that this is on Spring Boot 3. The earlier test application that we ran was on Spring Boot 2. So we will also get to know whether our automation runs works on Spring Boot 2, which we've already seen that it works. Does it also work on Spring Boot 3? So that will be a good test. We also see the dependencies that it has is the standard Spring Boot starter JPA, the Spring Boot starter web, and H2. These are the only there's a more Spring Boot starter test. Okay, these are the only ones. It does not have these other ones that we're looking for, Junit Mockito, Jacoco. So what we will do is we'll give it to it. Okay, so rather than searching for it, what I will do is I will go to the place where our automation setup is located. I have saved our automation setup here, this app setup. Inside this app setup, automation Junit Mockito app setup templates. Inside this templates I have this one here. I will just open it up here. Go back to the instructions and it says Junit Mockito mandatory. I need to let's see what are the mandatory items in here. So if you see, it starts from here. Okay, this is all mandatory dependencies that are required in the test unit. All these dependencies, and then there is a build plugins that we need. Those are all here. So basically, you see these dependencies are all related to Junit Mockito and Spring Boot starter test, and also dependency related to reflection, because our automation uses reflections. This reflection dependency, once you have auto generated the JUnits, you can remove this. We don't need it for the running of the application or running of the test. Okay, but for generation we do need it. Or you'll also notice that we need these build plugins. One this is the standard one, Jacoco Maven plugin. This usually is present in your application. These other ones are related to Jacoco. So basically we want to generate the Jacoco result reports automatically, and for that we need these dependencies and this configuration which says what tells the Jacoco report how and what to produce. So once you have this, once the JUnits run and they are all the JUnits pass, there is no failure, then this particular report will get automatically generated. That's the reason we need this. So what we will do is we have to add these to our POM. Just to make things easier, what we will do is we will import our test application into Eclipse. So that will make viewing also easier, and also our operations related to adding this POM and other items. So I'm just going to, this is my Eclipse, I'm going to go Alt F, import existing Maven projects. I'm giving it the path, the POM is selected, and let it do the import now. Okay, looks like we have the application here. Good. So let's just take a high level view of this application. Okay, this is the POM. Okay, so this POM we've already seen that it has basic dependencies already added. What do we need? We need these ones. These are right from here, from this Junit Mockito mandatory, right from here, all the depends. So we will add these dependencies in there, so all the way up to here. Go back to the POM. So this is dependencies starting tag, this is dependencies ending tag. We will add our dependencies here. So we have JUnit, Jacoco, reflections. Okay, it also has this build dependencies. There is already one Spring Boot Maven plugin build dependency already there. What we need is so this one is already the one. So we can simply replace the structure with our structure so that we get all. So basically we have Jacoco Maven plugin, Spring Boot Maven plugin, and the Jacoco coverage report. I'm going to make an adjustment here, remove this, build, and that's it. So build is also in here. Alright, so we added the dependencies and we added the build configuration for our Jacoco. Let's save this. Okay, let's run a Maven clean. What's the next step? Let's check the next step. Okay, we have to, so let's go back to our instructions here. So we checked first three steps. We added the dependencies, reference test. Okay, so there is a this just refers to a test application in case you need to see a template. It's already on GitHub and you will get it once you check out the automation from my GitHub. Back up your application so that you can reinstate it in case. So for now we'll assume our application is already backed up. Okay, we can always check it out again from GitHub if we need to. So we'll move to the next step. Okay, gather information about your application. What we will also do is, before we move forward, since we added additional stuff, we will try to see if it still builds and in the right state, because this is absolutely important for our application, for our automation to run. Okay, with the additional dependencies that we added in the POM, it looks like it's moving forward. and it is also, since we added the Jacoco dependency, it is also generating the Jacoco result after the test is run. We can take a look at that too. Okay, test run 1, Jacoco Maven plugin is invoked, build is a success. Now we will go to that location. So that means our application is good, test application is good. This is our application, this is the target that got generated. We go to site and we see, okay, Jacoco results. Let's see what is the current Jacoco coverage on this. It is 3%. Okay, it is only 3%. The reason it is 3% is because how many tests are there in this application. So if you see in the source test Java, there is only one JUnit test, and that too is a namesake one. Okay, so basically there is absolutely no JUnit coverage on this application that we got from the wild. Once we run the automation, we will see how much difference does it make. Alright, so this is our base case, and then we will move forward. So we did, okay, fine. Now we will move on to the next step on the automation. So we have done all these checks. We are now gathering information about the application. Please provide the local path of your Maven based Spring Boot application. Local path, that means, okay, that path, this path contains your POM XML. We already know what that path is. This path contains the POM XML here. So we will give it this path. Gather information about Spring Boot. Please provide the full directory path of your Spring Boot application main class. So the Spring Boot application main class, let's search where it is. Main Java com coder Spring GPA H2. This is the Spring Boot main class. So we will take this path. Provide it here. Now third, gather user preference. Auto generate the JUnits or only run the JUnits? Well, I want to auto generate because I don't have the JUnits created. So number one, and then move forward. Gather target class information. Please provide the fully qualified class name for which you wish to create the JUnit fully. Okay. Which class do you want to create the JUnits for? Let's take a look. See this class here. We have a parent directory. It is just application class. We have a tutorials directory, and then we have a tutorials. This is just a Pojo, and then you have a tutorial repository. This is again JPA, so there is nothing to generate JUnits for here. So if you see the tutorial class, this is a standard controller, and let's say how many it has. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, about seven methods in here. Each one is of different type. One is get mapping, second is also get mapping with an ID path variable, third is a post mapping, put mapping. So we have various combinations out here. Okay, so we will run, this looks like a good candidate to generate the JUnits for. So we will go here and give it the path. So give it the package first, and then the actual class name, tutorial controller. Okay, all right. Now it will start preparing the automation environment. It will just create certain directories, adjust certain directories, etc. So let's allow it to do that and move forward. Creating automation environment. Okay, so it's detecting your Spring Boot specifications, your Maven specifications. It wants to make sure these things are there before it proceeds to the next step. This is the information about your application. This is the name of your class, your artifact. It uses all this information to make a determination what kind of JUnits need to be generated, what pattern is need to be followed, what adjustments need to be done to move forward. Okay, so now that you've got all the information about your application, the structure, it is moving forward to launch the automation steps. So it's going to ask you a series of very basic questions about your application, so that it knows that it has got the confirmed information before it actually moves forward with the automation. Okay, all right. Is your target class, the class that we gave it, tutorial controller, is it a REST controller? Yes, no. Yes, so it is already determined it's a REST controller based on this this standard Spring Boot annotation, but still it wants to get confirmation from you that it is actually a REST controller. So yes, we have given it yes. Now it has detected that there is a get mapping endpoint in your application. It wants to know it needs to get some information about that. Please provide the valid input value for ID. So we have a get mapping, and we have this one here. Okay, so this one here has an ID, which is an input parameter. It wants you to supply this input parameter rather than making an assumption what you want. It wants you to supply. So ID is a long. So what we will do is we will supply it a legal value of long 1. Okay, again it has determined that there is a delete endpoint with an ID, and it wants please provide a valid input for that. Let's check that out too. Put mapping. Okay, this delete mapping has an ID, and this one is also long, so we will provide that to this. So you see there are 7 methods, so it will basically ask you and each of these methods that are there inside the controller are all different types. One is get, delete, put, create, etc, etc. So it will prompt you for the input. Wherever it needs input from to be passed dynamically, it will ask you that. Okay, so here also it's the same thing, same pattern is followed. For a put, please provide a valid input value for ID. Let's provide it, say 2. Okay, now for the above method, there is a method like called save that it has found. What is the number of input args? What is the number of input args? So let's just copy this piece of code. This particular save method, it is asking number of input args. You can literally actually tell from here itself that it is only 1. So the lexical analysis of this is a little cumbersome, so that's why it's just easier to ask the user. For us, for the developer user, even if I don't have knowledge about this code, it is extremely easy for me just to look at this and say, oh, this is just a one parameter, one argument here. And if I know about this code, it becomes even more easier. I don't even have to read through that. So but anyways, we will just go to Eclipse, and then we will see, just for better readability, we are talking about this method here. Tutorial save here. This is what it is referring to. It has just one parameter that it takes in. So we will give the number of arguments is 1. Okay, the next question is, what is the parameterized type inside this response entity? There is a response entity and there is a parameterized type inside it. It wants to know what is the type of that parameter. So we are talking about get tutorials. Okay, this get tutorials has a response entity and it has a parameterized type. You would notice that in the earlier examples, our parameterized type was a simple one. It was just customer, but here it is a little more complex than that. It's a list of tutorials. So there's maybe a little confusion what needs to be provided here. So for now, what we will give it, we will just give it the a concrete class here. So what is tutorial? We will need to give it the full class, full path. So tutorials is basically this whole path here. It's a POJO, and we will give it the whole path along with the name of the class. Okay, next question is, what is the parameterized type inside the response entity parameterized? So again, we are looking at find by published. Find by published has a response entity, and again it's the same pattern. So we will give it tutorial again. Yeah. Also, I want you to understand what's happening here. So automation is actually scanning every single line of your application. This is a quite complex activity, given that each one has a different way of writing, of programming. Each one has a different way of expressing the functions. So at times it becomes very, very complex to understand or interpret that line of code. So it just becomes rather than doing the cumbersome lexical analysis and being in a situation that you're not very sure whether what you have analyzed is right or not, it's just easier to ask that question and get the confirmed response from the developer, from the user. The developer, there may be many situations where the developer may be aware of the code and he'll be easily able to respond to these questions. These are very basic questions, and even if the developer is not aware of the code, like in this case where we have taken the code from the wild and we just don't know details of this, we are still able to easily tell what these values should be. Again, in this case, what is the parameterized type inside the response entity? Parameterized, we just have to go, we know exactly which class we are dealing with. We have to go here, find the method, and that's it. The response entity parameterized type is tutorial, and this is what we want. So this is very easy for us to provide this input, so we will provide that input and move forward. Alright, then we'll just go through the steps and complete the steps now. In the method save, okay, tutorial repository dot save, what is the number of input argument in the external class method invocation? This is the external class. So we have a controller. In that controller there is a tutorials repository, which is the instance of our JPA repository. It is doing a save method. So this is the external class, this is the method that is called, and what is the number of input arguments that are passed here? If you see, just a visual inspection of this would tell you that it is actually just one. New tutorial, and it ends here. It's just one number of argument, so we will give it 1. Again the same question, tutorial dot save. Okay, the question is, what is the return type of this external class? So tutorials dot save, let's go and check out what is this one has a return type, this. Okay, so it's actually just the tutorials folder. So we will give it the full path and the class name. Okay, delete all. It is found a delete all reference. What is the data type of this input argument in the above external class method invocation? Search for it. Delete all. This is delete all. What is the data type of the input? Okay, what is the data type of the input? Actually there is no data type, and this is a good test case for us. What do we do if there is no data type? There is no argument, and hence there is no data type. So if empty, enter void. So let's give it void. Okay, so now there is another one, find all. Tutorial repository find all. So tutorial repository is external class that is referenced in our controller, and it is making a call to find all method in the repository. What is the number of input arguments in the external class method invocation? Let's search what it is. Okay, what is the number of arguments? Number of input arguments is again 0. So we will put, if empty, enter 0. List, it has found list. Okay, now it needs to know if the above class or Pojo is the above class or Pojo specific to your application. What is list? Let's find it out. List is actually an array list. It's actually Java util list. So is the above class or Pojo specific to your application? It is not specific to, it's not my custom Pojo. It is actually from Java. It is internal to Java, and internal to Java and Spring. So it is this class specific to your application? No. So we put an N. What is the number of arguments in the external class method invocation? The external class method invocation is this. So basically we are saying tutorial repository is making a call to find by title containing this. What is the number of input arguments? Actually it's straightforward, it's just 1 here, nothing to really check. Okay, so yeah, it has further questions, but some questions that is already inferred from your previous answers, so it is not asking you, it is just moving forward with those inferences. Okay, it has found something else now. Tutorials repository dot find by ID. The stub has a return type of optional. Okay, this particular invocation has a return type of optional parameterized. What is the parameterized type inside this optional? Let's just find what is talking about. So we're talking about this. There is an optional here. Okay, so basically it wants to know what is the parameterized type. That means it wants to know what is inside these two angular brackets. It is actually tutorial. This is the same Pojo that we have been providing it for the other inputs. So we will just copy that and paste it here. Tutorials repository dot save. See, the more number of methods you have in your controller, it could be, if it were just one method, probably the number of questions would be would probably be just 1 or 0 for that matter, depending on the complexity of your code. These questions will be prompted. We will not have any choice on how modular the program is or how good or badly it is written, and we cannot just say that if the code is badly written or it has too many lines of code, this has too much of psychometric complexity, we will not create the JUnits, or the automation will not run on that. Instead, we have made it more flexible for these kind of scenarios. So the only thing is, in order to make those determinations of and interpretations of your code, it will ask you these questions. So essentially what we are doing is we are removing the entire, it is still better than writing your JUnits from scratch and spending all that time, maybe hours together, and writing from scratch. Instead of doing that, we would rather answer these simple questions and then provide all the information to the automation, and then the automation generates the JUnits for us in a matter of minutes. Okay, so here what we are saying is tutorial repository dot save. What does it want? What is the return type of this invocation? Tutorial repository dot save. So the return type of this, okay, not that. So tutorial repository. The return type of the invocation is again tutorials. So we give it the same thing. So most of the cases you'll realize that, I mean, this is standard pattern that is followed. Our Pojo, this would be our Pojos that are returned. Delete by ID. Okay, what is in delete by ID? What is the data type of this input argument? Delete by ID. Delete by ID. The input argument is ID, and what is ID? ID is a long. It needs a data type of that, so we will give it long. Okay, another question. It is interpreted from your previous answer. Info. Okay, that's it. It's all done. So process is complete. JUnits are generated. Close this console and proceed to the next step in the parent console. So we have to just proceed to the next step. This is our parent console. Code processing will launch a new unit, which is already launched. Once it completes, press any key to continue. So it is already completed. I am moving forward with this. Okay. Your auto-generated JUnits are saved at the below location. Please review it just as you see fit. So it's saying that your JUnits already generated. JUnits for the application which we took from wild, we have no idea about, and we didn't write a single line of code to write the JUnits. So we will go to that location. Okay, so you see there are two files that are already created here. Tutorial controller test and the other one. Let's go to our Eclipse and see where those are. And before that, I'll just do a refresh so that my workspace reflects those additional files. Okay, here it is. So you see, earlier we had just one test. Now under automation JUnit, we have two classes created. Let's open the second class also. Okay, so we have this classes created. Okay, the next step is, it is asking you to review. So let's review it. It's always a good practice to review the code. So these are the two. This is a tutorial controller. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 methods, and this is a tutorial controller test. It has corresponding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 corresponding test methods that it is generated, which is a huge step. That means it is at least done 50% of our work. Okay, now let's take a closer look at these classes that are created. Are there any compilation errors? Are there any items that look completely out of the normal? Let's take a look. You see, when I look at this tutorials controller test, there is already some items which don't look right. 1 and 2, right? So we will just see. So from this point onwards, automation has generated a lot of structure for us, lot of structure, lot of JUnits for us, but there are still a few things that are there which we have to straighten out. Now from here onwards we will see, once this is generated, how much of effort is required to remove this out. Is it a significant effort, or is it more of a simple effort, an effort that does not consume much time? Let's take a look at that. So here if you see, let's check this one out. So what is this saying? This is a compilation error. Tutorials repository dot save. What is error? The method save s in the CRUD repository, this is not applicable for s comma another argument. So basically it's expecting only one argument. So for some reason automation had thought that it requires two, and it gave two. Remove that extra argument and one error is gone. What is this one here? So what is this saying? Multiple markers. Cannot convert void iterable to this. Okay, so basically it is complaining about the input that we have provided here. Let's see what does this delete all require. So we go to our controller class. Where is this being called? Tutorials.delete all. We just have to provide it the right type of input. So you see tutorials.delete all actually doesn't take anything. We had provided it void because it actually does not take any input. So here it has created something called is void.class. There is really nothing called void.class, right? So since it does not take any argument, doesn't make sense to provide any input here. So that's it. Another error that's gone away. Okay, so this looks clean here now. Now also let's take a look at the other class that got generated to make sure that that class is also clean. So see, there is something that is not right here. It says set ID. The method set ID is undefined in the type tutorial. Okay, let's just reiterate one step. This particular DTO factory tutorials controller. So what happens is automation, so that you don't have to create these POJOs manually. Automation creates some very basic POJOs for you with which very standard return types, and this DTO objects pre-filled so that you can directly use it. If it is a little more complex, you can simply add your methods in here. So in this case we are simply creating a method which builds tutorial objects, fills in the very basic input argument. So for example, set title is a string, so we just put a test set title, that's it. Set description is a string. Set published is a boolean, so we simply put a legal value for boolean in here. You can create your own methods in here if you think that your DTO has to return something more complex. So for example, in this case it returns a optional tutorial. So what the automation has done is it has created a tutorial object and it is returning optional of tutorial. But you may have a case where it should return list of tutorial, right? You can simply copy this, create an object, create a list out of it, and then return it. So that's all up to you how you want to handle it, but this is a basic structure that is created, and in most of the cases the structure comes very handy. So what we will do is, why is it complaining about this set ID? Set ID is undefined. Tutorial does not have a set ID. Is it true? So this is tutorial class. It has an ID, it has a string title, it has string description and published. If you see, this is get ID. Let's see all the methods that are there. Get ID, get title, set title, get description. Okay, so you see that you have a get title, get set title, get description, set, which is standard POJO, but for whatever reason this application does not have a corresponding set ID. Again, this comes from the fact that we don't have any control of this application, right? And for whatever reason this application does not require a set ID, but a standard POJO that is created by automation expects it creates in the standard pattern. If there is a get, there should also be a set, that kind of thing. But it's very easy for us to handle this part because we know that there is no set, so we'll simply remove this, and that takes care of this compilation error. Save this one. That's it. those two fixes were very easy. They were very straightforward. Now what we will do is, now that the compilation errors have gone away, we will attempt to run this and see of these 7 JUnit methods that were test methods that were generated, how many actually pass and how many fail. So let's do that. This is my test pass tutorial controller test, run as JUnit test. Class not found. Have to this method, this class we imported, but let's see if it must be just a situation with our Eclipse. Let's do update project just to make sure it gets everything that it needs. Because we ran the ambient clean install from the console, we just need to make sure, and Eclipse also has those dependencies reflected. Now again, let's just run it from here and see if it actually builds. We just want to check if it builds, so we will skip the tests for now. The reason you could have as well run it from here, but we just for better viewing and understanding of the which JUnits pass and fail, we have opted to run it from here. You see here, it is already passed, so it was just a minor glitch with the workspace, so that's gone away. All right, now we will attempt to run our JUnit. Okay, looks like it has picked up the class, the application, and it is moving forward with the building, running the test. Okay, so you see here the JUnits are run, and out of our 7 methods, 1, 2, 3 are a pass. So we have a good almost 50% success rate on the automated JUnits. There are still 1, 2, 3, 4 which are failed or in error. Let's go ahead and check what the situation is and how easy or difficult it is for us to fix that. So before we do that, let's just take a look at a passing test case. This is a test case that is passed. All right, what does it do? It's a create tutorial test case. All right, it corresponds to this particular method, create tutorial. All right, I can, as a new developer, as someone who does not know this application, I can either try to go through this code manually and try to understand. At times it becomes a little more complex, or I can simply put a debug point here, and now that I have a test already created, I can run the debugger and go through the flow step by step. Because I already have an initiation point here, I can invoke this and find it out. I don't need a separate curl or a separate postman invocation to do this. So I am a new developer, I need to understand what this flow is. I will go here, I put the debug points right here, and I'm moving forward. Okay, I want to see what is the flow of this application, so I will just do this debug. Okay, Okay, so it came here, it does some kind of a stubbing, which is fine. Let's go ahead and see what it does. Okay, here actually it makes a call to our post endpoint. Okay, we'll move forward. And it is now into our controller. This is the post endpoint. It is moved into our controller. Okay, now it gives us our, now it straight away brings us here. Now whatever we need to understand about this code, we can simply step through this code and understand. So we see that the input, it took a request body. This request body is supplied to it. We didn't create the request body. Remember, the automation created this particular DTO factory with the tutorial object, and it's supplied it. It's a simple one. So we don't even have to do that. It came here, it provided it a request body, and now it is now making a call. I'll put a debug point here also. Okay, it is making a call to tutorials repository. What is tutorials repository? It is right here, and it is a simple JPA call. It's a JPA call, so it's internal call. What we will do is we will take it to the next step now. We are here. So one of the things that one of the aspects of JUnit is that whatever is external to this class should not be invoked. We should have it stubbed, and those stubbed values should come back. So is that happening? Will that happen, or will this actually go into our actual invocation? Let's take a look. So I'm going forward now. I'm going to the next step. Step through. No. So it has not gone to the actual external class. It has actually moved to the next step within the controller itself. And what it has done is it is actually populated this tutorial return with the stubbed values. Test description and test title. Where are these coming from? Basic knowledge of JUnit to tell you that these are actually coming from our stubbed values. So what this says is tutorials repository.save. When this is called with any parameter, the value that you return would be this. Don't call the actual method, just return this particular stubbed value. And you see DTO factory.get tutorial actually has test title and test description. This is what actually comes back and gets populated here. Okay, so our new developer will now understand that yes, this is what is happening. I come into create tutorial, it expects this kind of POJO as a input, and it makes a call to the database. Let's say in our case the database is not even available, so our developer would be stuck right here, or he has to create some kind of a database and have that data populated. Here he doesn't have to bother any of that, because our stubbed values, our mock actually takes care of it. So here it says that okay, fine, when this gets executed, this is the type of output that I will get. Okay, now once I get this output, it goes into this one. He knows that this is the flow now, and in the response entity it sends a 201 status code, and also it sends a 201 status code. So that's what it sends, and we will then move to the next step. We were here. The next step we here. So we have executed this. Our developer has understood the flow of the code, and now we are trying to verify a few things. What is it trying to verify? We are trying to verify. It's a post call. That means we have actually posted the data. It has gone to the in the real life it will go to the database, but here we have mocked it, hence we have simulated the database operations. And what we want to verify is that that particular operation is successfully done. The way we do it, the way we will check that is by saying after the controller is executed, has the save method in this tutorial repository been called, and we want it to be called only once. We don't want the save to happen twice. So that's what this statement does. Verify the tutorial repository save method was called only once. Okay, if this is true, then this will pass, otherwise it will fail. Let's check. Okay, it actually passed. It moved forward from this. That means it actually verified it that it's true. If you had to put a 0 or a 2, it would fail right there. The second verification it also does is the response HTTP response status code that came out from the execution of the controller, what type is it? We are expecting it to be 200 in the success, expecting to be successful HTTP status codes. 2xx successful is one of those. So is it successful, or was it something like a bad request or something else that came through? We will check if it is successful. Yes, actually it was a successful, because we saw that created was sent from here. That means 201 was sent, and that's what we have also verified. Yes, it was a 201. You can also see this from the output here, this console output. This is the response of our mock response that came after the execution of the controller. It gives you all the information. There was no the status HTTP status code was 201. The headers were all these. The content body also was sent out, and the content body has this. So this also is a second verification for us to know that things execute correctly. Now we will just allow it to move forward, and that's why this test is a pass. So we have done multiple checks after the execution. We have checked whether the save method of the repository was called once and only once, and also once that operation was completed, the response that we got in the status code was actually 2xx successful. Alright, so this definitely gives a very good ground for our new developer to understand the application and understand the class, and in a very short span of time, rather than depending on someone else on the team or taking someone else's time. And this is a huge advantage. Now, having said that, now let's take a look at one of our failing cases, and we will see how to fix those. Okay, for that I'm going to run this entire JUnit again. Okay, so here you see that. Let's take this one. This is the one that's failing, right? Find by published test. Okay, it is failing. It's actually telling me why is it failing here in this null pointer exception cannot invoke. Cannot invoke boolean value because the return value of argument matches.any is null. Such what it means by that argument. So it's saying the return value of this argument matches is null. Okay, so something is not right in this area of our JUnit. Okay, depending on your knowledge of JUnits, you may even be able to figure this out right away because you have written your test cases in the past. But let's assume that we don't have a good idea on this. So how do we go about troubleshooting this? So the first thing that we can do is simply put a debug point here. Alright, there are certain indications here. This is something it points to, but anyways, let's move forward. Put a debug point here. We put a debug point on the invocation of this, and then we'll put a debug point here on the verification. We know that something is, we'll also put a debug point. We know that something is wrong in this area. Alright, what we will also do is we will go to this get method in the tutorials controller, and so which method is actually, you can figure it out right from here. Name of the method is actually is in the name of the test method. So we will go, this is the method. Okay, so we will also put a endpoint debug point here, and debug point here, and debug point here, and also in something in this catch, because we know that in case it's failing, there's some error, so we know that it's going to come here. Now we will run the debugger. So rather than going manually through the code, this is the easiest way for us to flow and go through the flow. Also, it helps the new developer, or you also as an experienced developer looking at some legacy code, simply step through this and understand the functionality much faster than actually manually creating this manually walking through it. Okay, so here, this is, in this case, what we are saying is when a tutorial report, this is a mock that's created, find by published. Okay, we are trying to find something, we can get a result of published tutorials. All right, that means it's a whatever is published, send it back. If 3 books are published, send me those 3 books back. Okay, so that's what we are, that's generally what should be the functionality, just going by based on the name of this. So it says in the first mocking, it says tutorial repository dot find by published. When this method is called with true or false, any boolean means true or false, then return this one, DTO factory get list with stubbed values. This one returns you a list, okay, a list of string. Okay, basically this is the DTO that we created, a simple DTO that we created so that you don't have to spend time on it. So it returns a list of string. Okay, now what happens? Whenever that is called, it returns a list of string. This is the invocation that happens, so we will move forward and see where it goes. When this gets invoked, we come into the real tutorial controller, and here you see this is the repository method, and in this repository method, as we know, this is an external class, so this class should not be invoked. Okay, it should not be invoked. Instead our mock should be invoked. Where is our mock for that? This one. So what it will do is, what it should do, when the tutorial repository find by published is invoked with any parameter, any boolean parameter, it should return this one, a list of string. Okay, what does it do? We step through next, and we got list, an array list. Okay, with these values, test1, test2, test3. Is tutorials empty? No, it's not empty. Okay, so now we have reached this point and we are saying, okay, fine, we have got the tutorials output. Now we are going to construct a response entity and then send this tutorials. Okay, what does this response entity, okay, let's do that and go to the next step. Okay, so we got that execute method is completed. Now we will verify whether at this step we are verifying that the database operation, find by published, was called, and it was called only once. Okay, the mock was called only once basically, because we are not actually calling the database operation. Move forward, and that's where it failed. Again the same error, boolean value return. So here it failed here. So what happened is, we are telling it to verify that find by published was called, when find by published was called on any only once, and here we have mocked it by saying find by published on any boolean, and it is saying this any is not what it expects. So let's give it the right data type that it is expecting, any boolean. Okay, and now we will run this test case again. So by running this in this mode, we have pretty much understood that our problem area, right? So we are focusing on the problem area, trying to make the adjustments and then moving forward. Okay, so here, so we will step through this, go through this test very fast because we've already done this. We know that all this works up to this point, and now the problem comes here. The only adjustment that we did is we just matched it here. Whatever mock was calling, we are just trying to verify with the same structure of that mock. So now will it work? Actually it worked. It is quite easy for us to identify where the problem is and make the necessary adjustment. Okay, so next verification that it does is it verifies whether the return type was actually a 2x successful. What we sent is okay back, and this is a 200, so actually we should expect a success because it's a 200, and here the verification is also checking whether the return was a successful or not. And we will also put something here. Okay, yes, so that also passed. So yes, we have verified that the return of that was a success, the 20. Now we will see if this verification works. So what this tells is that in the JSON path that you got, this JSON path that you got in the response, I need to find an ID. Okay, is it there or not? So we will execute that. And it actually failed. Let's just allow it to, so that we see the stack trace. Assertion error. This clearly tells you what the error is. No value in JSON path. You see, our response was this: test 1, test 2, test 3, test 5, and our automation in the expected, our automation put ID. So hence it failed. How do we fix it? Is it going to be cumbersome way to fix it, or is it easier to fix it? So what happens is, when you want to fix it, automation gives you these various options that are available to you for fixing it. Since we are trying to check the content of this response tag, we could simply uncomment this and then say, okay, we know that this is the line of code that is error, so we simply comment it out. And we say, what this is saying is that you want to check the content. Okay, this is the standard way you check the content. If the content contains string, whatever string you want to pass, let's say in our case it is test2, then it is a pass. So we will simply try with that. And okay, now this is the compilation error. Okay, so we have made this another adjustment. So earlier we were saying that, okay, check ID and whether the ID is matching, but there is really no ID in here. So what we did is we took an alternate approach of checking the content. Okay, and we passed it. We know exactly what the content is, and this is what. So we can adjust our test case by saying that this is the content we want to pass. Okay, so the automation generates most of it, but there is still 1 or 2% that it does not get right. So this is one of those cases where it did not get it right. Now we will run the test case again. Okay, so we will step through these steps because we've already seen this execution. It all works fine up to this point. It does the verification that save was database mock was called, and it was called only once. Now it checks the status code. It comes here, and now we are saying that in the response, did we get a test2? That's what we are trying to check here. If we got it, will be a pass, and it's a pass. That means we actually were able to correctly verify that. So this is how we fixed it. You see, if we had to write this test method manually, it would have taken us a long time to get all these multiple things put in place. Automation generated this code for us, this test method for us, and only thing we had to really check for is minor adjustments into our method. And also remember, the other methods that were created were the 3 methods that were created were right off the bat all legal and working ones, so you don't have to do any effort on that. These other ones which are in the which are not in the right shape, that's where we have to do some minor adjustments. Now again, let's run the whole test class and see which other cases of failing. So I think there were 4 of them failing. Now let's see how many are remaining. Okay, fine. So we have a good out of the 7, 5 are passing and only 2 are failing. Let's take a look at this one. What is this saying? This error. Let's just run it first, okay, so that we get the clean error. So essentially what this is, get all tutorials. So it is getting a list of, basically it is expecting, logically speaking, it should expect a list of tutorial objects. Okay, what is he saying now? Okay, this is the error here. Wanted but not invoked. We wanted to invoke this find by title containing ignore case, but that was not. However, exactly one interaction of tutorials bean.findAll was invoked. So one thing here, if you are one who has already written JUnits in the past, this error you'll be able to quickly identify and be able to find out. What it is basically saying is, and just for readability I'll do this, there are two verifications that we are doing. One is for bean find by title, and find by title was invoked once, and also we are saying that find all was also invoked. This method is this error is basically telling you that only one of them was invoked, only find all was invoked, and this was not. Why is that? Again, what we can do is run our debugger and find what happened there. So essentially our problem is, we are saying find all was invoked, but find by tutorial of this one, find by title containing ignore case, this one was not invoked. Okay, why is that? And our automation has created this test where it says we need to verify this also. Well, we'll see whether it's right or wrong. So what we will do is we will also put a debug point on this real method in the controller. This is the one. We go here, there is an if, there is an else, there is another if, and then there is a return, there is a catch. Okay, we'll see how the flow is going. Again, this helps our developer, or you as an experienced developer, to walk through the code without much effort of setup, and also get an understanding of what is happening here. Debug as JUnit. Okay, so we will, so this is a mock. It says when tutorial repository.findAll is called, return get list with stub values. Basically return a list with string. Okay, a list of string. And it says here when tutorial repository, two database methods are called there. When find by title containing ignore case is called, return get list with stub value. Actually, yeah, so in both cases it's saying return the list with string. All right, so now we will move forward. Here is the invocation that is done. The get method of our controller is getting invoked. This is the endpoint. Okay, so we move forward. As expected, we get into this get method of our controller with the tutorials. It is actually get all tutorials. Get all tutorials takes in a title as a request parameter, and then it is actually then moves forward. So in our case, you see the title is null. Okay, if it is null, so there is if else here. There is two flows in here. If it is null, then do this. If it is else, then do this. Now you see the reason why the error came. The error said that only find all was invoked. Find by title containing ignore case was not invoked. This is the reason for it, because the title was sent as null. This is new, and there is no way that this else block will be executed. So now when you do this, the mock of this find all will get invoked, and the control will straight away move to this. So none of this actually happened. So that's the reason for that error. So it's so easy for us to identify the error by running the JUnit, right? And that's the reason we're getting okay, fine. Actually it went in here and it created this error. Okay, okay, so now here we know that it's only invoked find all and it's not invoked this one. That's why find all will pass, but this one will not, because the execution of the flow has not gone through that point. So we will demonstrate that by, that's where the error came. See the invocation target exception that came because of that. That's what it says. We wanted from our test case we wanted to invoke this, but it is not invoked. Now that explains the error. Okay, so in our case we know that logically speaking, the flow, if you pass null as the title, the flow does not go through that. So a simple fix would be just to not have this particular verification here. Automation created it because it thought, yes, this verification is also required. It does not really know how the if else flows work, and that, so it does not have that kind of knowledge. So that's why it just gives you all the options. It is much easier to eliminate things, comment out things, rather than to add things. So that's why it makes our work a lot more easier, just to comment it out. Again, we have made that adjustment. We will run this again. Okay, so in this case what we will do is yes, debug and run. We will go to the flow again. We'll see if there is any other error that comes in, or this test case passes straight away. Okay, we start here. So these are the mocks, okay, which we have already seen what they are doing, and here we see, okay, the invocation of the real method is done. Comes here, this we've already seen. Because the title is null, we will get into the if block, okay, and we will not get into the else block. Okay, so that we've already seen. So what should happen is, if this title is null, this should execute and we should come here, right? We should come here. Let's see what happens. This find all expects a list of tutorial, okay, but we see that it actually comes into the catch block. Now we have to see why this catch error has come. Verify, yes, this will pass because we know that the find all mock was already called. Okay, the error is assertion error. What happened is, because it went into the catch block, we got an internal survey error 500, and what we're expecting is a 200 successful, right? That didn't happen. Now the question is, why did the error happen? Okay, that's what we need to take a look at. In this case, changing this to 500 will not work. It's logical that we don't really expect a 500 internal server error when a get operation, get endpoint is run. We actually expect a 200. So we know that something is wrong with this, with the execution, with not the execution exactly, but the way the execution is correct, but maybe it's with the values that we have passed it. That's why it's not executed the way it should have executed. So here, if you see, let's go to these errors, and we are seeing that the error actually, the start point of the error was here, right? And from here it directly went into the catch block. So there is something that has gone wrong here. If you see what happens here, when tutorials repository find all is called, it is expecting a list of tutorial, okay, and our JUnit method, when the find all is called, what do we actually mock and pass it? We are passing it, we say when the tutorial repository find all is called, pass it this one, a list of string, but it is expecting a list of tutorial object, and that's the reason it fails. It's not able to cast it correctly. What do we do? How involved is this fix? So essentially what we have to do is, instead of giving it list of string, we simply have to give it a list of tutorial objects. Okay, so what we have to do is, we simply have to create this list of tutorials, list. Okay, let's give it what it wants. Okay, and we will simply populate it with some values, list of set. Okay, it explains. No, this is a, okay, we have to give it a tutorial object, right? So we will construct a tutorial object. And we will populate this tutorial object. Dot set description is test. What does it need? It needs published and this thing. So we can either create the, and once we yeah, let's see this one. Okay, and once this is done, we have to just add it to our list. So that's it, and we have created the tutorial list. Now we simply give it the expected type. What we say is this find all, when it is mocked, it is actually expecting a return type of list of tutorial and not just list of string. And that's the reason for our error. So we simply give it the list of string. And here also it's okay, we give it the list of string. We know that the error is here, find all. List of tutorial, we give it the list of tutorial, that's it. Okay. You will also notice that there is an easier way to do this. Instead of writing this whole thing, we can simply the DTO factory has created simple objects for you, like I told you. So it has already created an object that constructs the tutorial. So you simply take this, that's it. 1 line of code and 2 line of code, that's all you need to do. And then you pass tutorials in here. Okay, now again let's run it and see what other errors we could be getting from here. Now is this the correct test case? Yes, test case 4. We will run test case 4 again. Also, you will notice that when you pass this stubs, when automation creates this stubs for you, mock stubs, it really doesn't know what is the input, that functionally what is the correct input. It just does it based on the data type and whatever is legally compiles. So this is something that you know better, and it's always better to look at these input values and tune those according to yours. So in this case, it was just a question of putting the right value in place. Instead of tutorial, instead of list of string, it should have actually been list of tutorials. That's all the change we have made here. Okay, let's move forward with our execution. The method is executed, has come to the if. Let's go here. This is our point of failure earlier, when we said earlier, when we execute find all, we were getting the expectation is a list of tutorial will be sent. Okay, but we were sending list of strings. So now we are actually giving it the correct output in the stub. So let's see what happens. It actually made it through. We didn't go into the catch error block. That means it actually did the correct casting for it. So this is a list of tutorials that is actually sent. You see this list of tutorial, and now it is actually sending a response entity. Okay, earlier it was saying sending internal server error and okay. So hence our execution reaches this point. We know that the database operation was called once, and now we are verifying whether the response status, HTTP response status, was also as expected. We expect it to be 2xx successful. Is it 2xx successful? We'll put a breakpoint here also. This is the output. Okay, from here only you can verify actually the HTTP status response status calls was successful, and this is the body that we got back from it. Okay, so yes, so that passed. So we did get a 2x successful, hence this test case is a pass. Now it also verifies one more thing. Did we get a JSON path with ID in it, and that ID did it match this particular get tutorial get ID? Remember we had a case where remember in the tutorials Pojo, where we had ID and only get ID and not a set ID. That was a difference, that was a deviation. So we are actually checking ID here, so that might not be correct, but let's run it and see what happens. Okay, this actually there was an error, and we'll see. So it clearly tells you the error was that the JSON ID path ID, there is an assertion error there. So it clearly tells you that this is the line of the automation generated line which does not fit very well. So what is the fix for it? Is it going to be a major involved fix, or it's a simple one? Let's take a look. Let's comment this out first, the line that we know is problematic. We want to verify the content of the response that came in. So this is a simple template that it has given you already. You already know that this is from the output. You see this is what is coming back from the actual method execution. You can take any of this and put it out here and make a simple compilation correction, and now again we will run this. Okay, so it reached here and it reached here. This is all fine. We have already seen this. It has reached your actual tutorial controller, and in this case title is null. You can title is null, and hence it came here. It did a mock call to this find all. It got a list of tutorials back. It checked if is it empty. No, it's not empty. So it went here and it returned a 200 okay with the tutorials that came back from the mock. Okay, now we go back to the execution, goes back. It verifies that tutorials find all was called once. The return type on the HTTP status code was to access successful, and actually it passed. You see, it actually executed this part here and said that in the response content it got this thing. But this is with minor adjustments we were able to get this JUnit test corrected. We don't have, again, what it gave us gave the capability to us is we don't have to write the whole test method. We have only to make the most of the cases the test method will be fully working, legal and correct. There are few other cases where there will be 1 or 2% chance where it may not be, it may have compilation errors or some other tweaks that you need to make, and those are much more easier for us as developers to see and make those tweaks rather than write the entire JUnit. Also having this debug functionality helps us walk through this flow much easily, and our tasks are done much faster than spending all the time hours and hours together in writing this JUnits. Okay, now that we have done it, again we will run the whole test and see if there are still any JUnits failing. So we had 7 methods in all, out of which let's see how many are a pass and how many are still failing. Okay, there's still one failing here, and this one is due to okay, this is also this looks like the same error, same type of error that we saw earlier. Well, let's see if we can do the same fix for this. This is get tutorials by ID. Okay, so we are sending an ID and we are getting a tutorial back. Okay, and it says tutorial by find by ID, return to me an optional tutorial, OPT tutorial. It's simply creating the tutorial object and returning it, which is fine. We are making an invocation here for this particular endpoint, which is a get endpoint, and we are verifying that in that endpoint there is a find by ID call being made to the database. We have already mocked it here, and we returned optional tutorial. We are saying that verify that that particular tutorial repository.find by ID was called, mock was called once, and exactly once. Okay, so that is the verification that is done here, and then it is verifying whether the response code was to access successful. The error here indicates that the problem came here. Okay, and we already know from our previous checks that the ID field was not getting set correctly by automation. So let's run this and see what was the actual, what's the execution of it. So this time we will not run in debug because we've already understood the flow of most of them, and we can just do a run of it and see what comes in the output. Okay, so assertion error. So yes, this is the error. Again, let's just run in debug now. So we can confirm that the error is actually coming from here only, and other cases are just fine. Again, every time we run debug, it will help you understand that how easy it is to trace the flow and understand the flow, even if it's a new application which you are not aware of. Okay, so our debug is started and you reached here. We are going to go with this particular method. It's a get endpoint. We go to the real controller and we just want to put some debug points here. 1, 2, 3. There is a if else part here. Okay, so what we will do is now we will run through it. So here the actual invocation is done. It has reached the real method of your tutorials controller, and what we are saying is tutorial repository. When a find by ID is called, then a database operation external class is called. We already mocked it here and told it to return this particular OPT. Okay, this OPT, it's an optional tutorial with certain values set in it. So database operation will not get called. It will with the mocked values. See this mock values here. Test title 1, test description is what we had entered in. Now the next step that happens is tutorial data is present. Let's see how the execution goes. Yes, it is present, and hence it returns a OK. All right, returns a HTTP OK. There is no error. Now we will go back here into our, now here we are verifying that tutorial repository find by ID, the database operation that we just saw, is called only once, and we did see that the mock was called only once. So this I am expecting to be a success. Yes, so that verification is successful. Second verification is on the HTTP response status code. Was the response status code 2x successful? Yes, it was, because we've already seen it happen in the code, in the execution of the code. But anyways, let's verify it. So step through, yes, that also passed. Now here you would notice in the console all the data is getting printed from the mock response. The status is 200, which we saw. There are some headers that have come to, and there is a body also that has come through. This is the body. Okay, this body has ID 0, test title 1. Okay, so we will see if this, and here we see JSON ID is here and like this. So basically we are trying to figure out whether the content is also correct. So our point, so it failed at that line. So our point of failure is actually, here. So something that or this automation is generated is not correct. So what we will do is we will give it the right one. So we're checking the content. So let's try this way of verifying the content. So we have to tell it what you want, what you're actually expecting in the output. We know that the output of this application is this one. Okay, so we will give it that particular content. Here we are correcting, making the minor tweaks to the code that the automation generated. Okay, so that's what, and now we will again run this. Oh, actually we ran some other test. We should have run this 8. Let's just allow it to complete, and then we'll run this again. I'm just going to skip through this because this is not the test we want to run. This is already the one we will run. Okay, the test that we want to actually run is 8. This one. Okay, and we want to verify whether our minor tweak that we did actually worked or not. This is number 8, and I will do a debug on this, debug run on this. Okay, so we reached here. We know that we have already gone through these steps, so we know that this is all passing. So this is the actual controller method that got invoked. We know that this also works. Now this is our point of contention. Will this work or not? So essentially what we've done is that we know in our execution of our method returns this. So our test that was generated was incorrect. It was expecting ID and this, which was not coming in that particular format. Hence we made the correction to the automated JUnit test. With a minor correction, we simply give it the pattern is already there, you just have to give the correct value to it. Will it work? And actually it worked. So a minor change for the JUnit actually worked. Okay, again let's run the entire JUnit and see if there are still any test cases failing. And we see all the test cases have now passed, and we have a legal, working, and a fully functional JUnit test class created for not one, not two, for 7 full methods of an application which we have no idea of, no knowledge of, and when we started off, and now we have a fully functional JUnit class that we created without writing a single line of code, by simply making minor changes, minor tweaks to the test class that was JUnit test class that was automatically generated by our automation. Okay, this is extremely helpful. This is a huge time saver and a huge helper for any of our new developers or anyone who is working on code that they are not really aware of and they want to generate the JUnit test coverage. Next step, what we will do is we will go back to our automation where we left it, and we will see what was the step. So we were at this step, we were saying review. So we have done the review, we have done the we have seen that there's some minor tweaks that were needed. We have made those corrections. We have now also given it the right values that had to be given, and we have made those minor corrections to the automated to the JUnit that was automatically generated. So we come here and we will now launch the JUnits that we just created. Okay, and then we will also see the coverage report. Okay, so it is test. You can as well run this through Eclipse, whichever way you prefer, but we just wanted to complete the automation and also see the coverage report that gets generated out from here. Remember earlier the coverage was 0%, or rather 3%, very, very small, because we had just one class in there, one test class in there. So there are 7 tests run, all tests 7 tests have passed successfully, and now it is going to generate the Jacobi report for us to show us the coverage. And you see here it is 65% compared to the 3% earlier. We have a 65% coverage of the entire application without writing any substantial amount of code, but by running the automation and giving it very, very basic information about our class. Let's go right into our controller and see. You see here the controller itself is a 50% coverage. You see this, there are certain classes which are more than 70. This particular one update is more than 80% coverage. This is substantial coverage that we have provided, and this is the class. We will see, you can clearly see that many of the lines are covered. The lines that are not covered are simply because it's an if-else branching. If we had to, for example, in this case, we passed a test parameter as null. If you simply pass it, if you write another copy paste that particular test method, and instead of null, if you pass it a value, the execution would go here, and this line also would get covered. And you can similarly have another another method written similarly by simply tweaking the value of that input parameter, and again this line also would get covered. So that way we would come very close to full coverage. This itself gives you a 67% coverage, which is a huge coverage. Now in your Jacoco coverage configuration, Sonar configuration, normally we exclude DTOs, repositories, constants class, static classes, and all that stuff, because those really don't need the JUnit. If we had to, once we put those configurations in the production type configurations in, this percentage will go much higher. Right now it's also considering those DTOs as not covered, but those really don't need to be covered. So you see this is a huge difference that we have attained. From 3% we have reached 67%, and on the individual classes more than 70%, more than 80%. This is a huge advantage and a very substantial saving of our time, and as well as our team's time, which ultimately results in good development practice and very stable production deployment. Thank you.